do you think the purpose of life is?
I guess it would be to try to better the lives of the majority of the people.
What do you think the purpose of the world is?
I don't think there is a purpose. It happened.
I don't know. I'm an agnostic, but that's certainly one of the themes of my life search.
Since the dawn of history, man has sought to understand his world. The advance of human know-how throughout the centuries has helped us uncover an ever more amazing world.
It's given us greater power over the materials with which we build, helped us move faster and further toward wonders just waiting to be discovered. But with each advance of knowledge, the more we understand of the hidden mysteries of the universe, the marvels of the human body, the miracles of nature, the workings of a computer chip,
the more we realize how little we truly understand. Perhaps there is some deeper reality just waiting to be revealed. In the past 200 years, mankind has discovered, invented, and produced more than in the entire span of recorded history.
We have witnessed tremendous breakthroughs in the realms of science, medicine, and technology, occurring at breakneck speed, unleashing new powers never before dreamed of, blurring the boundaries of man's potential.
We see this evolution, this explosion of modern technology, where now these boundaries are not here anymore.
This proliferation of knowledge isn't just an event. It happens to be part of the historical process for man's search for what makes this world tick. Man's search for the underlying unity behind all the phenomena that we witness.
The development of technology is forcing people to confront a crucial existential issue. What am I? Am I content to be a merely smarter animal that can create more clever tools to live a more powerful animal life? Is that enough?
No longer are material pursuits satisfying. You know, you just go through stages and stages of acquiring more and more material things, but you get to a place where you realize, you know what, there's a soul inside a body that's aching and searching and searching.
The search has taken us around the world and across the universe, seeking answers to the age-old questions. Why was the world created? What is the purpose of life?
Science has its way of offering answers, and religion has answers of its own. But are science and religion as far apart as they seem?
Traditionally, when science first came on the scene, many people saw it as science and technology as somehow being a contradiction to religion, a contradiction to God. And what we're seeing happen is more and more scientists, including Nobel laureates and the like, who are proclaiming that their studies are bringing them into a greater appreciation and insight into the workings of God and His creation.
In the midst of our technological revolution, Time magazine asked scientists about the concepts of a deity, the origins of the universe, and the beginnings of life on Earth.
They cite an intriguing book about God, Cosmos, Bios, Theos, produced not by theologians, rather by 60 world-class scientists, 24 Nobel Prize winners among them.
Co-editor and Yale physicist Henri Margenot concludes there is only one convincing answer for the intricate laws that exist in nature.
Creation by an omnipotent, omniscient God.
Wisdom is developing on the secular front, is no longer secular, but is actually enables us to develop a greater insight and appreciation into God's workings in His creation.
And moreover, these scientific insights also seem to reveal God's purpose, the alleviation of human suffering.
The doctor was explaining to him, you take veins out of the leg and use them to replace the veins in the heart. How is it that you can walk afterwards? He said, because there are extra veins in the leg. Guess what? There are extra veins which are almost never used. So he said, it seems that God put them there so that when we'll be able to do surgery, we'll have something that can repair the heart. Now, we look at these discoveries and these inventions as gifts from God. God wants us to have these things at this time. The deeper question, why does he want them to have it at this time?
In all the thousands of years of history, all these great inventions came about all about in the same period of time. On all fronts, biological, medical, technological, and industrial fronts. The question is why?
Why now and why all at once? There have been discoveries and inventions in previous times, but they were relatively few and far between.
The inventions of the wheel, the catapult, and the discoveries of gunpowder and even fire. However, in more recent times, during the scientific and industrial revolutions, historians are astounded that advances have happened so quickly, with amazing synchronicity, and with such acceleration. Could this sudden explosion of knowledge be simply random or accidental?
Perhaps the fastest development of all has been in information technology. Suddenly, we're all connected. Knowledge is available to anyone, anywhere, at the click of a button. Who could have imagined, even a few short years ago, how much knowledge and power could be unleashed by today's computers? Was this a normal evolution of technology? Or was it perhaps a part of a master plan by a creator? Could this sudden explosion of knowledge be simply a random occurrence?
According to a 2,000-year-old classic work on Jewish mysticism, it's not random at all. It is purposeful, and it was predicted. The Jewish mystical writing is the Zohar.
The Zohar, the classical book of Jewish mysticism, authored by Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, makes a prophetic statement that in the Hebrew year 5600, which is the equivalent of the year 1840, there'll be a great explosion. The well springs of knowledge will open up, both knowledge from above and knowledge from below, which is taken to mean both spiritual knowledge, Torah knowledge, and secular knowledge. And the reason for this proliferation is because it's a prelude and a preparation for the Messianic times, when the world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea.
A prophet said this 2,000 years ago when all these things didn't exist. Obviously, there must be something behind it. And the answer is, in order for God, which is spiritual, and the world, which is material, to blend together, the only way was going to be through a breakthrough of nature.
At the same time as this breakthrough of nature was occurring in science and technology, a parallel breakthrough was taking place in terms of spiritual awareness.
Led by the Baal Shem Tov and his disciples in settlements throughout Eastern Europe, the mystical revolution of Hasidic philosophy explained how the world and God are a unity, that God is everything and everything is God.
All of technology and science is understanding unity, trying to understand the underlying forces behind nature. From a Torah point of view, that's discovering the united God. Life, reality, is not just your body and the material world around you. This is a tip of the iceberg that exposes a godly reality that's higher than what we perceive with our eyes and with our ears. So you say God is everything, you're basically saying that God encompasses all reality. When you say everything is God, you're essentially saying that the universe, the way we see it, is not just what we see, but it's an extension and a manifestation of divine energy.
When we speak about God creating the world, it's not only about a matter of God being the source of the creation. God is actually the material of the creation. God is actually the very fiber, the very reality of the world is godly.
And as we probe deeper and deeper into what's really underlying creation, it's all really from one source. That energy and mass are the same thing. We're finding that all matter is made from the same vibrations of energy. When we look at an atom and we see that from a few tiny particles, an entire city could be wiped out. We've seen an immense amount of energy hidden, locked away in a tiny amount of matter, whether it be a human being or an animal or a plant, even a grain of sand, has an immense, powerful, godly energy that is creating it something from nothing every single second.
Infinite power concealed within every grain of sand.
In fact, the mystical teachings tell us that everything in creation contains not just godly power, but godly purpose. From grains of sand we derive silicon, and from silicon we fashion microprocessors that empower the information age.
Powerful technology with a purpose. The purpose? To communicate and process knowledge. Not just any knowledge, the knowledge of God.
Communications, for instance, today, whether it's television, radio, or the internet, you can reach people in a split second over thousands of miles. And you can literally inspire someone sitting quietly in their own privacy of their basement, you can reach to a heart. As the Zohar clearly predicted, this is all a preparation and the beginning of a world that will be completely consumed with the ultimate knowledge, which is divine knowledge, godly knowledge.
Communications technology now offers an apt metaphor for God's all-seeing, all-knowing presence in the world.
It says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, in the Ethics of Our Fathers, there's an eye that sees and an ear that hears, and everything is transcribed in a book. And now we see that instantaneously things are seen, heard, and recorded anywhere in the world by anybody. The knowledge can disseminate. There's no physical barrier. There's no place where the knowledge can't reach now. We know when we send a radio wave, it doesn't just go where people have radios. It's going where people don't have radios. In fact, a radio wave goes out into space forever and ever and ever. And if you want to go catch it, you have a nice big enough radio, you'll pick that up too. And you get the St. Louis Cardinals game from 50 years ago if you want to go far enough in space and you have a big enough radio.
We take this knowledge that we have and use it to express age-old truths about God and godliness in the world so that people could turn on a television, the internet. People could use all of these existing technologies and use them as means to deepen their connection to God.
Do you think there's a God?
I don't know. He's never come and said, "Hi, I'm God," so I really couldn't tell you.
I believe that there is supernatural powers beyond what we see in the rational world.
I believe in heaven. I believe in going there.
The great paradox of the modern world is that while science often describes and helps us appreciate the reality of godliness underlying creation, at the same time, the spiritual dimension is hidden and concealed from us. This hidden nature of God also has a purpose.
God has created a world where He creates the possibility for human beings to altogether deny His existence. It's by His design that this world is a perfect concealment of God's existence. Why did He do it? He wants something that should come from us. In order to accommodate that, He has to completely erase His steps. He has to completely remove Himself so that having a relationship with God should not be a deduction. Worship Him, but rather it should be a personal choice. And He wants us to discover Him, as Abraham did. He was the first Jew. To discover Him, recognize His existence, and moreover recognize that it's in our best interest to worship Him.
When you create something from nothing, that thing has to constantly have a motor which makes it run. And that motor is God. The moment God says, close the motor, everything vanishes. And therefore everything must be God, and God is everything. However, God, in His great ability, was able to make even things that don't look like God, but really they are God. The areas which are totally negating God, that is also God.
Wisdom comes from God. Now let's think about this in simple terms. Every one of us has had a problem. Intellectual problem. What do you do when you're confronted with an intellectual problem? You think about it. You try various strategies. Let's suppose you fail. What do you do then? Sleep on it overnight, try it again the next day. Suppose you try the same strategies over and over and they fail. After a certain number of times, often an answer comes. Where did it come from? A spiritually sensitive person knows that these insights that come from nowhere come from capital N, nowhere. They really come from God. The spiritual dimension here is to feel yourself in touch with God, to feel the gift that God is giving to you. It's a challenge to see God in the physical world. It's a challenge to see God in the history of man. And it's a challenge to see God in one's own self.
God's gift of free will offers mankind a choice. We can try to see His presence in the world, or we can choose to ignore it.
By the same token, we can look at our modern technological advances as gifts from God, or we can fail to appreciate their godly purpose. We can even turn God's gifts against ourselves.
We have the capacity for the first time in history to destroy ourselves. Then that forces the question, who am I? What are we? What are we going to do with this capacity? We're not playing anymore.
Free will is the most profound gift that God has given man, because free will is one of the great dichotomies of existence. In His infinity, God has created an impossibility, a logical impossibility. We are totally governed by Him, and we're free. We're independent of Him.
According to the same mystical writings that predicted the explosion of material and spiritual knowledge, we can use our free will and technological capabilities to spread the word of God, perfect the world, and bring on the Messianic age.
Maimonides cites it very clearly. He says, it will be a time where there will be no war and no famine. There will be no jealousy and no hate. Because the world will be fulfilled with the pursuit of knowledge, divine knowledge. So materialism will no longer be an end in itself as it is today, people just making money in order to make money. It will be a means to a higher end, to serve God.
If we are living in a world of unprecedented unity, and a world filled with divine knowledge, is there any reason why war, sickness, and human suffering exist in a world that an omnipotent, omniscient God has created?
The first 6,000 years of history, corresponding to the first 6 days of creation, are years where the world is going through growing pains, self-perfection and correction. And the 7th millennia is a perfect Sabbath-like rest where God's essence is expressed in the world.
These 5,760 difficult years that we have experienced in this world are only a preparation. This is equivalent to a pregnancy. So that with God's help, we are collectively going to give birth to the great redemption.
It's a process that began with Adam and Eve thousands of years ago. Any good deed done, every self-sacrifice, every time someone, God forbid, died for their beliefs, a building block was put into place. So when the Messiah actually comes and there's a redemption in the world, it's not a magical thing that suddenly happened. It's an accumulative process that began thousands of years ago that now comes to fruition.
And the reward is a messianic world, a perfect world, a godly world, where being a human being and doing what God wants is not untrendy.
We have become so accustomed to life as it is today, we think this is real. You know, imagine you go into, you're sitting in a dark room. You'll sit there long enough, you begin thinking this is natural, this is healthy, this is where you belong. And someone says to you, no, there's a light out there. And you say to yourself, no, there's no light, this is it. Essentially, the message of Mashiach, the message of redemption is that, no, there is a light. You don't have to be stuck and resigned to the status quo. The world is not the way it seems to be. We're not stuck in our place. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're right at that threshold of that light right now. It's essentially seeing reality as opposed to seeing illusions. So the material world is very much like a veneer that shrouds, like a curtain that you can't see behind the curtain. And the purpose is, which is the purpose for why God created the universe, was to create a dark world and for us to bring the light in, that we should be wise enough, sensitive enough to experience and to appreciate the godly energy within everything that exists.
Appreciating the godly energy in everything that exists will not in itself bring on a perfect world.
But rather, in the physical world which God created, physical action is required. And that decision God has left up to mankind.
The choice between selfishness and selflessness. The choice of doing what's right or doing what's comfortable. And that's a choice we all make every moment. So in a way, every time a person does a mitzvah, a good deed, and they go against the grain of their own selfishness, their own narcissism, they brought a little Mashiach into this world, a little light.
It is not something that we have to climb mountains in order to achieve it, but just being better, by being nice to each other, by helping an old lady crossing the street, by giving someone a smile, by listening to our elders, to our parents. Simple things, doing more goodness and kindness.
Every one of you, man, woman, and child, were created by God for a purpose. That purpose is your soul, and to allow that soul to emerge in your life.
If his soul doesn't get the appropriate attention, if it isn't the guiding force in his life, if he doesn't exert himself to integrate soul and body together to create a harmonious human existence, then he will not be all that he can be that is worth being.
How do you do that? By committing to a life that's dedicated not to your own interests only, but to divine, spiritual, godly interests. That, in other words, means doing a mitzvah. Mitzvah means connection. You get connected to your purpose, to God's intention of your being here, by dedicating your life to being kind, good. There's a thing called the universal laws, which are essentially belief in God, bringing God into your life. A dedication to morality, to ethics, honoring family, honoring other human beings, honoring life.
Find out for yourself, elevate yourself, work on your inner qualities, work on your emotional attributes. This is all part of it. I mean, learning the biggest secrets of Torah and stopping yourself from being jealous for a moment are basically all part of the same process of recognizing the Mashiach inside us so that Mashiach can be revealed in the world.